Hello and welcome back to the From My Prospective podcast, where I, Jackson McCarty, keep you up to date on all the names you need to know in the college football world. Some guys that could be poised for a breakout year in the NFL, some of those younger guys that inevitably could change the future of football. So today, for the second podcast we're going to go over the 5 top names you need to know for the 2023 draft. Yes, I know I'm a little bit ahead of the gun here, but before we get into those 5, I do have quite a few honorable mentions I want to bring up. These guys you won't see in the list, and there's a number of guys here that really caught my eye. If I'm honest, Hendon Hooker from Tennessee was 5B for all intents and purposes. He is a very talented kid. Only had 3 interceptions last year to 32 touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken. He had a phenomenal campaign. My major qualm with him is he looks a lot smaller as far as width-wise goes on tape than I kind of feel comfortable with. And him just now making the jump from Virginia Tech to Tennessee, I'm interested to see if that was something more along the lines of, oh, we didn't have tape on this kid, so we didn't know what to expect, or if this is a sustained process. I could very easily see him jumping pretty high up on those boards. But what we're really looking for in this list are guys that either have a ton of potential that is yet to be developed fully, guys who have already started making really, really great tape. You know, there's a couple quarterbacks on here and a couple names that I'm sure you've already heard that we have, as a country that is paying attention to football, we have already zoned in on quite a few guys. But we're going to start down with number 5, most likely the name you've heard the least in this cycle, and that would be Will Levis from Kentucky. Now, he is Mr. Potential, if you will. He is such a talented kid. We just haven't seen him put it all together yet. His athletic gifts are in abundance. All you got to do is watch about 30 seconds of him playing, and you realize he could just as easily play a number of different positions on the field. He is built like a linebacker when you look at him. And he's got good size. He's 6'3", 220 pounds, kind of closer, or he's somewhere in that hybrid range of what you used to look for quarterbacks and what we're more often seeing in the NFL. So that'll be interesting, and he's, again, following into that new mold. He has tons of dual threat potential. He moves around really, really well, surprisingly well from what I came in expecting, and some of the numbers that I saw from how many rushing yards he picked up to what he actually was managing to accomplish out there. The big issue right now for him is his accuracy. He hasn't quite figured out how to use all of those superpowers, if you will, that he has. And we've seen plenty of quarterbacks in the past come in with all these loads of great gifts, but they can't ever use them properly. What good is a gift if you can't ever get it out of the box? So making sure Will Levis can make that next jump and really start to hone his skills. I'm not even looking for some giant statistical year, just improvement as an individual is really what we're focused on. So he is number 5. Number 4 is a quarterback that I personally really, really like, and I'm not going to say I expect him to move up, but I don't think enough people are talking about him in these conversations, and that's Coastal Carolina's Grayson McCall. I got to touch on him a little bit yesterday, or in the previous podcast, rather, and he's so gifted in the sense of how hard he is willing to work. You can truly see that in his tape. He's not the most athletically gifted guy. He moves around really well, but he doesn't have the super duper arm that a lot of these prospects do. But that doesn't really hinder him a whole lot. He's had 2 really, really good years at Coastal where he can get it done on his feet and with his arm. He just continues to, despite not having phenomenal guys around him. I do like Javon Hiley. I do like Isaiah Likely. They're both gone now, so that'll be interesting to see how he can manage to cope in a sense. But if he comes out and has a year where he still looks as good as he did, and Coastal Carolina's record is still reminiscent to what we've been seeing recently, as opposed to the Sam Howell effect of whenever he lost all his guys last year and his stock plummeted. If McCall can avoid that, I really, really think that there's a spot for him on these lists moving forward. He's a super duper talented kid. He's never eclipsed 1,000 yards passing, which is a bit of a worry. But when you look at everything all together, he knows how to make what he is given work. It's a lot it's something that's hard to ask of players because you don't want to tell them that they're limited, but he understands what he needs to do. He doesn't really seem like he's trying to overshoot what his gifts are, and he's done a really good job of making his presence known without necessarily having the talents necessarily that these other guys have on the list. So for number three, and this guy I feel like is probably going to be the one, if I get any backlash, it'll be on him because a lot of people have him as quarterback one and at the bare minimum quarterback two. But we're talking about C.J. Stroud. And maybe it's a little bit of being gun shy from quarterbacks in that uniform, but you have to grade players individually, and there are definitely some things that I worry about C.J. Stroud. I don't necessarily think he has the greatest arm. I am not in love with his mobility. Sure, he can move around a little bit, but he's not going to win you games with his legs. And he's lost about every single weapon he had other than Jackson Smith and Jigba. So it's going to be a tough year. And we say that, or I say that rather, like Ohio State doesn't have 7 other NFL ready wide receivers sitting on their bench just chomping at the bits. But I don't really know what to think about him yet. We've seen a year's tape on him now, and he's still kind of a question mark for me. I definitely don't see the argument for quarterback one as of right now. That can absolutely change moving forward, but he's he just doesn't feel like he's going in that spot yet to me. And perhaps this is a double-sided edge because the guy I have directly ranked above him, who we'll talk about in a second, has played even less than CJ Stroud has. But in his tape, I got a lot more understanding of what he's going to be and a lot more excitement from watching him than I did Stroud, who, as we've seen, Dwayne Haskins and Justin Fields and all these quarterbacks get pumped out. The system, as great as it might make you look, doesn't really help you out in a lot of ways. So he's going to be the most fun one to watch how his stock fluctuates. Justin Fields was quarterback two entering the year last year, and look where, or year before rather, and that really didn't do a whole lot for him. He ended up being quarterback 4 off the board. I mean, I still think he'll end up being a first rounder so long as something doesn't go horrifically bad in Ohio State. But he's not a guy I'm 100% confident in, and I'm not 100% confident in number 2 either, but I do feel a lot better with where he's at, and that is Tyler Van Dyke of Miami. All told, he put up phenomenal numbers with talent far inferior compared to everybody else on this list other than Grayson McCall, probably. Will Levis, you might have an argument there, but Tyler Van Dyke, in games he played more than 10 snaps in, he never had less than 200 yards. There was a game where he had 11 throws and still eclipsed 200 and something odd yards. So he's a very, very good player. And again, going back to what we were talking about with Hendon Hooker earlier, maybe it's just not enough tape on the guy, but he became the ACC's one of their better, if not their best quarterback last year, purely within this short stretch of time. So I've got a lot of faith, or maybe faith's the wrong word. I have a lot of intrigue towards Tyler Van Dyke moving forward. He didn't crack 3,000 last year again. He had that 200 or less or over 200 yards every game. He had more than 10 pass attempts in, which is huge for me. Just the fact that he came in boots on the ground, got moving, figured it out, knew what he wanted to do, and he's just that hair bit bigger than Stroud. So for your older thinking front offices, whenever you're really putting it up, if you don't see a whole lot of difference, you get that extra inch and I believe 10-ish pounds between them, and you go, okay, well, this guy is just that little bit more. So, who's going to take over for Matt Ryan in Indianapolis? I know that's probably a year or two away. Tyler Van Dyke could be that option there. There's plenty of people that you think about in this Miami. If Tua doesn't work out, Tyler Van Dyke doesn't have to move very far, and he provides you something different. He's got a good arm. So he's going to be the most interesting watch, more likely than not, because there is no guarantee that he will be a draftable player by the end of this year, but there's also no guarantee he won't be quarterback 1 because he is given a lot more as far as stature and shown an incredible amount on tape in a very short period of time. So that one's one to keep your eyes on. And quarterback one, if you don't know it by now, I would be genuinely shocked. It's Bryce Young from Alabama. The only real knock that there is on Bryce Young, in my mind, is that he's not a towering quarterback. He's 6 foot and under 200 pounds. That's a little bit alarming. I'm not going to lie, but the second most worrying thing, if I had to say one, was Alabama really hasn't put out great quarterbacks that we've seen at least. Jalen Hurts is probably the best of the bunch, and he finished his career at Oklahoma. And you still got Tua, who's trying to figure things out. I do like Tua. I think he'll figure it out this year, more likely than not. But Mac Jones, a very low ceiling, high floor guy. I think he did very well in his rookie year. I don't know that he has much room to grow from there. There's not a lot of supreme quarterback one talent coming out of Alabama. And I think a large part of that could be that you have to be very, very bad for that system to fail you. So Bryce Young, so long as he stays on the straight and narrow, I figure he'll finish quarterback one unless we have a Joe Burrow-esque rise or we have somebody who really just sets themselves apart. I don't see Bryce Young moving. And maybe you'll get, and I can already hear it actually, whenever we get closer to draft day, where, such and such, whoever has the first pick, for this example, we'll just say Seattle, first name I thought of that needs a quarterback. Seattle's GM not in love with Bryce Young's height, thinks CJ Stroud or Tyler Van Dyke or whoever we're talking about, Hendon Hooker, one of these bigger quarterbacks, he thinks this so-and-so is a better fit, and Pete Carroll wants this guy. I can already hear it, essentially, because that's just what happens with these smaller quarterbacks. It's the same as with the small hands thing. It's outside of that, though, when you watch his tape, super accurate, got a great arm, playing for a very pristine program, getting to know pros, coming from an offense that, while it's not producing illustrious quarterbacks, it's still not failing you where you have to coach it out of them like Ohio State is. You've got so much to enjoy there. It's very pro ready. And even if he's not, a top 8 quarterback in the league at any point in time, he could still be a very good quarterback. So Bryce Young, pretty comfortably quarterback one for me going into this. I don't know where he'll finish at the end. I don't imagine, if things really, really go bad, like they did for DJ in Clemson, maybe he comes back because he's got another year or two of eligibility. So I don't see Bryce Young really having all that many issues. I do think he'll end up being a top 5 pick, but there's about 11 months between then and now. So how about we wait it out? But if there's any names you thought I missed, anybody you would switch around, please feel free to let me know in the comments below. And that is the end of podcast number 2. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.